Wholesome Appalachia, Episode 6, Mother Jones. Hey y'all, I'm Heather, and this is not Poison Appalachia, it's Wholesome Appalachia. Once a month, we'll take a walk on the brighter side of Appalachia, because there are a lot of good things in Appalachia. I'm just drawn to the darker side of things. So the third Friday of every month, we'll have a bonus Wholesome Appalachia episode. Today's episode is on Mother Jones. I've mentioned her on an episode or two. I know I mentioned her on the Mate One Massacre podcast, and maybe another one, I can't remember. But she's actually not from Appalachia, but she's very vital to Appalachians who worked in the coal industry. So I thought she would be good for this episode. Mary Harris Mother Jones rose to prominence as a fiery orator and fearless organizer of the mine workers during the first 2 decades of the 20th century. Her voice had a great carrying power. Her energy and passion inspired men half her age into action and compelled their wives and daughters to join the struggle. If that didn't work, she would embarrass men into action. I've been in jail more than once, and I expect to go again. If you are too cowardly to fight, I will fight, she told them. She was a feisty lady. I like feisty ladies. I wish I was feistier. But Mary G. Harris was born on the north side of Cork, Ireland, the daughter of Catholic tenant farmers Richard Harris and Ellen Harris. Her exact date of birth is uncertain, but she was baptized on August 1st, 1837. Harris and her family were victims of the Great Famine, as were many other Irish families. That famine drove more than 1 million families, including the Harrises, to immigrate to North America, as Harris's family did when Harris was 10. A bit about the Great Famine. The Great Famine, also known as the Great Hunger or the Irish Potato Famine, was a period of mass starvation and disease in Ireland lasting from 1845 to 1852 that constituted a historical social crisis and had a major impact on Irish and social history as a whole. The most severely affected areas were in the western and southern parts of Ireland, where the Irish language was dominant. Hence, the period was contemporaneously known in Irish as An Droichead, which literally translates to the bad life and loosely translates to the hard times. The worst year of the famine was 1847, which became known as Black 47. The population of Ireland on the eve of the famine was about 8.5 million, but by 1901, it was just 4.4 million. During the Great Hunger, roughly 1 million people died and more than 1 million more fled the country. This caused the country's population to fall by 20 to 25% between 1841 and 1871, with some towns' populations falling by as much as 67%. Between 1845 and 1855, at least 2.1 million people left Ireland, primarily on packet ships, but also on steamboats and barks, one of the greatest exoduses of a single island in history. I mean, can you imagine? They lost half their population in 60 years. I just can't imagine. It had to have been awful. The approximate cause of the famine was the infection of potato crops throughout Europe during the 1840s. Impact on food supply by blight infection caused 100,000 deaths outside of Ireland and influenced much of the unrest that culminated in the European revolutions of 1848. Longer-term reasons for the massive impact of this particular famine included the system of absentee landlordism and single-crop dependencies. Initial limited but constructive government actions to alleviate famine distress were ended by a new Whig administration in London, which pursued a laissez-faire economic doctrine, but also because some in power believed in divine providence or that the Irish lacked moral character, with aid only resuming to some degree later. Large amounts of food were exported from Ireland during the famine, and the refusal of London to bar such exports, as had been done on previous occasions, was an immediate and continuing source of controversy, contributing to anti-British sentiment and the campaign for independence. Additionally, the famine indirectly resulted in tens of thousands of households being evicted, exacerbated by a provision forbidding access to workhouse aid while in possession of more than 1/4 acre of land. I feel like these themes repeat and repeat and repeat in our history, and that's kind of why people say, we have to learn our history so we can change it for the present, but it just keeps happening. But that's neither here nor there. I just think it's kind of interesting how we do repeat ourselves. History does repeat itself for sure. Many of the immigrants came to North America to escape the famine. Mother Jones's family was one of the many. Mary was a teenager when her family immigrated to Canada. In Canada and later in the United States, the Harris family were victims of discrimination due to their immigration status, to Catholic faith, and Irish heritage. Mary received an education in Toronto at the Toronto Normal School, which was tuition fee and even paid a stipend to each student of $1 per week for every semester completed. Mary did not graduate from the Toronto Normal School, but she was able to undergo enough training to take a teaching position at a convent in Monroe, Michigan on August 31st, 1859 at the age of 23. Side note here, my cousin got married in Monroe, Michigan, so surprisingly, this is actually someplace I've been to. That doesn't happen very often. General George Armstrong Custer was also from Monroe, Michigan, and there's a big statue of him on a horse there. General George Armstrong Custer was from Monroe, Michigan, and there's a big statue of him on a horse there. My mom and I were driving through the town, actually looking for the beach, which is a lot harder to find than you think it would be, being right on Lake Michigan, and we must have passed that statue like 5 times. Anyways, that's just my little story there. But back to Mary Harris. She was paid $8 per month, but the school was described as a depressing place. After tiring of her assumed profession, she moved first to Chicago and then to Memphis, where in 1861 she married George E. Jones, a member and organizer of the National Union of Iron Molders, which later became the International Molders and Foundry Workers Union of North America, which represented workers who specialized in building and repairing steam engines, mills, and other manufactured goods. Considering Mary's husband was providing enough income to support the household, she altered her labor to housekeeping. In 1867, Jones lost her husband and their 4 children, 3 girls and a boy, all under the age of 5, during a yellow fever epidemic in Memphis. After the loss, she returned to Chicago to open another dressmaking business. She did work for members of Chicago's upper class in the 1870s and 1880s. She opened her own shop, patronized by some of the wealthiest women in town. According to one account of her life, Mary's interest in the union movement grew when she sewed for wealthy Chicago families. I would look out at the plate glass windows and see the poor, shivering wretches, jobless and hungry, walking alongside the frozen lakefront. She said the tropical contrast of their condition with that of the tropical comfort of the people for whom I sewed was painful to me. My employer seemed neither to notice nor to care. In 1871, 4 years after the death of her family, Jones lost her home, shop, and possessions in the Great Chicago Fire of 1871. Jones, like many others, helped rebuild the city. According to her autobiography, this led her to joining the Knights of Labor. Man, that's rotten luck. First the yellow fever killing her family, then losing everything in the Chicago fire. Poor woman. I just feel bad for her. But if this stuff hadn't happened, maybe she wouldn't have became who she was, so... Jones started organizing strikes. The first strikes and protests failed, sometimes ending with police shooting at and killing protesters. Most members of the Knights were men, and by the middle of the 1870s, member numbers leaped to more than 1 million, becoming the largest labor organization in the United States. The Haymarket Affair of 1886 and the fear of the anarchism and social change ignited by union organizations resulted in the demise of the Knights of Labor when an unknown person threw a bomb in the altercation between the Chicago police and workers on strike. I vaguely remember hearing something about the Haymarket Affair, but I couldn't have told you a thing about it. So just really briefly, I wanted to explain what it was. The Haymarket Affair was a pivotal event in labor history, a violent confrontation in Chicago's Haymarket Square on May 4th, 1886. It stemmed from a labor protest demanding an 8-hour workday. A bomb was thrown into the crowd of police, resulting in the deaths and injuries, and led to wrongful conviction and execution of 8 labor activists. It became a symbol of the struggle for workers' rights and sparking a Red Scare. The Haymarket Affair is significant for several reasons, including its role in the establishment of International Workers' Day, May Day, its impact on the labor movement, and its influence on public opinion and the perception of labor activism. The Haymarket Affair is considered a watershed moment in American labor history, marking a turning point in public perception of labor activism. So, just kind of wanted to go over that real quickly. But after that, Mary began to travel across the country. The nation was undergoing a dramatic change, and industrialization was changing the nature of work. She moved from town to town in support of workers' struggles. In Kansas City, she did advanced work with a group of unemployed men who marched on Washington, D.C. to demand jobs. In Birmingham, Alabama, she helped black and white miners during a nationwide coal strike. Mary organized a massive show of support for Eugene Debs, the leader of the American Railway Union, after he had served a 6-month prison sentence for defying a court order not to disrupt railroad traffic in support of striking Pullman workers. If you listen to my Moundsville prison episode, Eugene Debs was held there for a little bit, so I always say these episodes all tie back into one another, and they really do, so. But let's get back to Mother Jones. Jones first displayed her oratory and organizing abilities in Pittsburgh during the Great Railroad Strike of 1877. She took part in and led hundreds of strikes, including those that led to the Haymarket Riot in Chicago in 1886, which I just mentioned. And then in June 1897, after Mary addressed the Railroad Union Convention, she began to be referred to as Mother by men of the Union. The name stuck that summer when the 9,000-member mine workers called a nationwide strike of bituminous soft coal miners, and tens of thousands of miners laid down their tools. Mary arrived in Pittsburgh to assist them. She became Mother Jones to millions of working men and women across the country for her efforts on behalf of the miners. She paused briefly to publish The New Right in 1899 and a two-volume Letter of Love and Labor in 1900 and 1901. Her later focus was on mine workers, but in 1901, workers in the Pennsylvania silk mills went on strike. Many of them were young girls demanding to be paid adult wages. The 1900 census had revealed that 1/6 of American children under the age of 16 were employed. John Mitchell, the president of the UMWA, brought Mother Jones to northeastern Pennsylvania in the months of February and September to encourage unity among striking workers. To do so, she encouraged the wives of the workers to organize in a group that would wield brooms, beat on tin pans, and shout, "Join the Union." She felt that wives had an important role to play as the nurturers and motivators of striking men, not as fellow workers. She claimed that young girls working in the mills were being robbed and demonized. She felt that the rich were denying these children the right to go to school in order to be able to work to pay for their own children's college tuitions. To enforce worker solidarity, Jones traveled to the silk mills in New Jersey and returned to Pennsylvania to report that the conditions she observed there were much better. She stated the child labor law is better enforced, for one thing, and there are more men at work than seen in the mills here. In response to the strike, mill owners claimed that if the workers insisted on a wage scale, they would not be able to do business while paying adult wages and would be forced to close. Jones encouraged the workers to accept a settlement. Although she agreed to the settlement that sent the young girls back into the mills, she continued to fight child labor for the rest of her life. In 1903, Jones organized children who were working in mills and mines to participate in her famous March of the Mill Children, a 125-mile trek from Kensington, Philadelphia, to the summer house and summer White House of President Theodore Roosevelt on Long Island in Oyster Bay, New York. They had banners demanding, "We want to go to school and not the mines," and held rallies each night in a new town on the way with music, skits, and speeches drawing thousands of citizens. As Mother Jones noted, many of the children at the Union headquarters were missing fingers and had other disabilities, and she attempted to get newspapers publicity for the bad conditions experienced by children working in Pennsylvania. However, the mill workers held stock in most newspapers, and the newspaper informed her they could not publish the facts about child labor. Because of this, she remarked, "Well, I've got stock in these little children, and I'll arrange a little publicity." Permission to see President Roosevelt was denied by his secretary, and it was suggested that Jones address a letter to the president requesting a visit with him. Mother Jones wrote a letter requesting a meeting, but never received an answer. Though the president refused to meet with marchers, the incident brought the issue of child labor to the forefront of the public agenda. In 2003, nonfiction book Kids on Strike described Jones's children's crusade in detail. After that, Mary Jones became mainly involved with the United Mine Workers. She frequently led UMW strikers in picketing and encouraged striking workers to stay on strike when management brought in strikebreakers and militias. She believed that working men deserved a wage that would allow women to stay home and care for the kids. Around the time strikes were getting better organized and started to produce greater results, such as better pay to the workers. Active as an organizer and educator in strikes nationwide, she was involved particularly with the UMW and the Socialist Party of America as a union organizer. She gained prominence for organizing the wives and children of striking workers in demonstrations on their behalf. She was termed the most dangerous woman in America by West Virginia District Attorney Reese Blizzard in 1902 at her trial for ignoring an injunction banning meetings by striking miners. There sits the most dangerous woman in America, announced Blizzard. She comes into a state where peace and prosperity reign, crooks her finger, and 20,000 contented men lay down their tools and walk out. In 1897, the United Mine Workers launched a strike for a living wage in the coal fields. Jones was a strategic part of the Union since that time. For her, it was more about union contracts. She argued that ordinary miners should direct their economic destiny and that the public should own the coal and natural resources, not corporations. She believed in organizing at the community level to demonstrate workers' capacity for managing their destiny. She believed that the so-called unskilled workers, immigrants, and African Americans should be the base of the new movement. She put women and children at the center for struggles in the coal fields, making a family-based movement. One of Jones' key contributions was building workers' commitment to unionism that bridged racial and ethnic divisions. She condemned white supremacists in the union movement and argued, for instance, that the black miners of West Virginia were the best trade unionists. In the Southwest, she argued that Mexicans and Italians should be the base of the movement. When an African-American woman impressed with Mother Jones' commitment to their cause suggested she would kiss Jones's skirt hem in gratitude, Jones replied, "Not in the dust, sister, to me, but here on my breast, heart to heart." She agitated in the anthracite fields of eastern Pennsylvania, the company towns in West Virginia, and the harsh coal camps of Colorado. Nearly anywhere coal miners, textile workers, or steel workers were fighting to organize a union, Mother Jones was there. She was banished from more towns and was held incommunicado in more jails in more states than any other union leader at the time. In 1912, she was even charged with capital offense by a military tribunal in West Virginia and held under house arrest for weeks until popular outrage and national attention forced the governor to release her. During the Paint Creek, Cabin Creek strike in 1912 in West Virginia, Mary Jones arrived in June 1912, speaking and organizing despite a shooting war between United Mine Worker members and the private army of the mine workers. Martial law in the area was declared and rescinded twice before Jones was arrested on February 13, 1913, and brought before military court. Accused of conspiring to commit murder among her other charges, she refused to recognize the legitimacy of her court-martial. She was sentenced to 20 years in a state penitentiary. During house arrest at Miss Carney's boarding house, she acquired a dangerous case of pneumonia. I very briefly mentioned this in my Matewan Massacre episode, and I'll briefly mention it here. The Paint Creek, Cabin Creek strike, or the Paint Creek Mine War, was a confrontation between striking coal miners and operators in Kanawha County, West Virginia, centered on the area enclosed by two streams, Paint Creek and Cabin Creek. The strike lasted from April 18, 1912 through July 1913. After the confrontation, Fred Stanton, a banker, estimated that the strike and ensuing violence cost $100 million. The confrontation directly caused perhaps 50 violent deaths, as well as many more deaths indirectly caused by starvation and malnutrition among the striking miners, and the number of casualties accounts among the worst conflicts in American labor union history. The strike was a prelude to the subsequent labor-related West Virginia conflicts in the following years, the Battle of Matewan and the Battle of Blair Mountain. Jones was released after 85 days of confinement, and her release coincided with Indiana Senator John W. Kern's initiation of a Senate investigation into the conditions in the local coal mines. Mary Lee Settle describes Jones at this time in her 1978 novel, The Scapegoat. Several months later, she helped organize coal miners in Colorado in the 1913-14 United Mine Workers of America strike against the Rockefeller-owned Colorado Fuel and Iron Company, in what is known as the Colorado Coalfield War. Once again, she was arrested, serving time in prison and inside the San Rafael Hospital, and was escorted from the state in months prior to the Ludlow Massacre. After the massacre, she was invited to meet with the owner of the Ludlow mine, John D. Rockefeller, Jr. The meeting was partially responsible for Rockefeller's 1915 visit to the Colorado mines and introduction of long-sought reforms. The Colorado Coalfield War was a major labor uprising in the southern and central Colorado Front Range between September 1913 and December 1914. Striking began in late summer 1913, organized by the UMWA against the Rockefeller-owned Colorado Fuel and Iron. After years of deadly working conditions and low pay, the strike was marred by targeted and indiscriminate attacks from both strikers and individuals hired by CF&I to defend its property. Fighting was focused in the southern mining counties of Las Animas, Huerfano, I'm so sorry if I'm not pronouncing it right, where the Colorado and Southern Railroad passed through Trinidad and Walsenburg. It followed the 1912 North Colorado coalfield strikes. Tensions climaxed at the Ludlow County, a tent city occupied by about 1,200 striking coal miners and their families in the Ludlow Massacre on April 20th, 1914, when the Colorado National Guard attacked them. In retaliation, armed miners attacked dozens of mines and other targets over the next 10 days, killing strikebreakers, destroying property, and engaging in several skirmishes with the National Guard along a 225-mile front from Trinidad to Louisville, north of Denver. Violence largely ended following the arrival of the federal soldiers in April 1914, but the strike did not end until December 1914. No concessions were made to the strikers. An estimated 69 to 199 people died during the strike, though the total dead counted in official local government records and contemporary news reports is far lower. The labor dispute was the bloodiest in the United States, and Colorado historian William J. Convery called it the bloodiest civil insurrection in American history since the Civil War. The Colorado Coalfield War is notable for the number of company-aligned dead in a period when strike-breaking violence typically saw fatalities exclusively among strikers. The Battle of Blair Mountain, also involving the Baldwin Felts and United Mine Workers. Baldwin Felts, they were in the Battle of Matewan also, if you'll remember. It's considered the largest uprising in the U.S. by a number of combatants. Contemporaneous accounts suggest the Blair Mountain strikers feared Baldwin Felts would utilize a gun-equipped truck on their number, erroneously believing that the Death Special had been present at the Ludlow Massacre. Like the Colorado National Guard in 1913 and 1914, the West Virginia National Guard were drawn into the suppression of the strike of Blair Mountain. Now, I'm going to do an episode, I think, about the Battle of Blair Mountain someday, so I'll go into more detail about that one then. Mother Jones attempted to stop miners from marching into Logan County, West Virginia in late August 1921. Mother Jones also visited the governor and departed, assured he would intervene. Jones opposed the armed march, appeared on the line of the march, and told them to go home. In her hand, she claimed to have a telegram from President Warren Harding offering to work to end the private police in West Virginia if they returned home. When UMW's President Frank Keeney demanded to see the telegram, Mother Jones refused and denounced her as a fake. Because she refused to show anyone the telegram and the president's secretary denied ever having sent one, she was suspected of having fabricated the story. After she fled the camp, she reportedly suffered a nervous breakdown. Mother Jones was joined by Keeney and the other UMWA officials who were also pressuring the miners to go home. Since strike leaders cast doubt on the veracity of the telegram and refused to stop their march, Jones' reputation did suffer as a result of her attempt to halt the miners' march. But she remained active in the labor movement even after that. In her 80s, Mother Jones settled down near Washington, D.C. in 1921, but continued to travel across the country. In 1924, although unable to hold a pen between her fingers, she made her last strike appearance in Chicago in support of striking dressmakers, hundreds of whom were arrested and blacklisted during their ill-fated 4-month-long struggle. In 1925, she published her autobiography of Mother Jones. Despite her radicalism, Jones did not support women's suffrage, arguing that you don't need a vote to raise hell. She pointed out that the women of Colorado had the vote and failed to use it to prevent appalling conditions that led to labor violence. She also considered suffragists unwitting dupes of class warfare. Jones argued that the suffragists were naive women who unwillingly acted as duplicitous agents of class warfare. During her later years, Jones lived with her friends Walter and Lily Mae Burgess on their farm in what is now Adelphi, Maryland. She celebrated her self-proclaimed 100th birthday there on May 1st, 1930, and was filmed making a statement for a newsreel. Mary Harris Jones died on November 30th, 1930, at the Burgess farm, then in Silver Spring, Maryland, now part of Adelphi. There is a funeral mass at St. Gabriel's Catholic Church in Washington, D.C. Jones is buried in the Jones is buried in the Union Miners Cemetery in Mount Olive, Illinois, alongside miners who died in the 1898 Battle of Verdun. She called these miners killed in strike-related violence her boys. In 1932, about 15,000 Illinois mine workers gathered in Mount Olive to protest against the United Mine Workers, which soon became the Progressive Mine Workers of America. Convinced that they had acted in the spirit of Mother Jones, the miners decided to place a proper headstone on her grave. By 1936, the miners had saved up more than $16,000 and were able to purchase 80 tons of Minnesota pink granite with bronze statues of two miners flanking a 20-foot shaft featuring a bas-relief of Mother Jones at its center. On October 11, 1936, she, also known as Miners' Day, an estimated 50,000 people arrived at Mother Jones' grave to see her new gravestone and memorial. Since then, October 11th is not only known as Miners' Day, but also referred to and celebrated in Mount Olive as Mother Jones' Day. The farm where she died began to advertise itself as the Mother Jones Rest Home in 1932, before being sold to a Baptist church in 1956. The site is now marked with a Maryland Historical Trust marker, and a nearby elementary school is named in her honor. Mother Jones remained well-known symbol for the American labor movement after her death, and remains an important symbol in the power of organized labor among activists and organizers both in the United States and globally. In 1930, Mother Jones said the following regarding her legacy: "I am considered a Bolshevik and a Red and an IWW and a radical, and I admit to being all they've changed me with. I admit to being all they've charged me with. I'm anything that would change moneyed civilization to a higher and grander civilization for the ages to come, and I long to see the day when labor will have the destination of the nation in her own hands, and she will stand a united force and show the world what workers can do." So though she may not have been Appalachia, Mother Jones was a very important part of Appalachia, so I definitely think she deserves to be recognized for what she did to help mine workers in Appalachia and around the nation. She was a strong-willed woman and achieved a lot in her time. So that's about it for today's episode. These Wholesome Appalachia episodes are always a little bit shorter, but not much, so I hope you enjoyed it. As always, thank you for listening. You can follow me on social media under Poison Appalachia. I'm on Facebook, Blue Sky, YouTube, Threads, Instagram, TikTok, and Lemonade. Also, I have a website, poisonappalachia.com. And if you could, please like, rate, and follow me on whatever podcast platform you listen to. Thanks. Bye.